In today's video, we'll be learning how to maximize member engagement with this one simple tool. One thing to consider as a thought experiment is how would you minimize member engagement? And one of the easiest ways to go about minimizing engagement with your members in your community is to simply ignore the members, right? So this makes members feel rejected and gives the impression that your community is an inactive wasteland. What I mean by that is if you ignore your community members, I think it's rather intuitive why they would feel rejected because, for example, let's say somebody puts all of their time, energy, and attention, they spend like 1 hour creating this amazing guide that they upload as a written post to your forum feed in your community, and nobody answers it, you don't answer it, there's no posts, no comments, no likes, no engagement of the kind whatsoever. And so naturally, this community member feels rejected. They feel like they put all of this time and energy, they invested all of this focus, all for nothing, right? And on top of that, they might also be then thinking, if they don't feel rejected, or maybe they feel both of these thoughts, or they think both of these things, is that perhaps this community is just simply an inactive wasteland. Perhaps they're thinking, well, the reason why I haven't seen any attention below my post, or I haven't managed to communicate with many people here, is because this place is just dead. It's an empty wasteland and it's not worth my time. And even worse, if this is a paid community that you're offering, this person will simply pull the plug with regards to paying you on the monthly if you have a monthly subscription community. Now, what this does is that it creates a negative feedback loop, right? So this creates a negative feedback loop, ensuring that members don't engage with your community space. So it's pretty intuitive. This is probably one of the most powerful means by which to stop actually having member engagement in your community, which you wouldn't want in any way, shape, or form. Now, let's consider the positive side of things, which is to commit to the opposite effect. One way to go about doing this, and the tool that we'll be focusing on today, or more so the lesson than a tool, is that you want to engage with members, especially when they first join your community. Now, I know this sounds intuitive, and you probably are thinking that this is pretty obvious advice, and I would agree with you if it were just to engage with members, but I add here the detail, especially when they first join your community, right? Because they have their first impressions. So here you're creating a positive feedback loop when you engage with your members, especially when they first join. And this is super important that you do this, especially for new members who join, is that you engage with their posts, right? Which is why it's important to set up an introductions post or have members commit to some kind of onboarding ritual wherein they introduce themselves to your community, and so that people can actually engage with whatever value post that they're bringing to the table. But it's important, again, that you do this for new members because you're giving a positive first impression. And first impressions, I think we can all agree, are very important on a personal level in real life. And so the same can be said of online communities. When a new member makes themselves known to a community space and they're rejected, then by all means, don't expect that member to be engaged in your community in the future in any way, shape, or form. And of course, the opposite is true, because if you engage with members, especially new ones as we're seeing here, these positive first impressions will motivate a member to actually participate in the long run, to participate more in your community space, which is a positive feedback loop. As more participation incurs more participation on the part of others, as more networking and conversations are unfolding in your community space. So in terms of management, don't sleep on this advice whatsoever. If you're a community manager or a community builder or owner, make sure that you're taking stock of the new members that are joining. Make sure to engage with them, to show them that they're actually welcomed in your space, that they're not going to be rejected, or that worst case, your community is an inactive wasteland. They wouldn't want to be a part of something like that. So make sure that your community is active, make sure that you're engaging, especially with new members, and this is going to maximize member engagement in the long run. Now, in terms of actionable steps, some good practices in this regard are to ask as many thoughtful questions as you can in an effort to stimulate discussion. You might also consider trying the exercise of imagining yourself as the most curious person in the world. So let me unpack that for you here, right? Because you might not feel inspired to necessarily comment and interact with a new member's posts, for example. One exercise and thought experiment that I commit to help come up with questions to ask new members, and even existing members for that matter, is to just try to imagine myself as the most curious person in the world. If writers have writer's block, then people who ask questions have something called questions block, let's say, for example. And simply imagining yourself as the most curious person in the world is going to remove that questions block. It's going to remove those filters and enable you to ask as many questions as possible, to give you a license to be as curious as possible, right? So you'll be coming up with way more questions if you just approach new posts, you approach new members with a huge degree of curiosity, asking about where they come from, what are their goals, what are they working on, these kinds of things, which of course will be different for your circumstances. But as a principle, you might consider just trying to imagine yourself as the most curious person in the world. This is going to help you come up with tons of questions that you can ask new members and even existing ones for that matter. And the good part about this particular lesson is that over time, things will actually get easier. So over time, and as new members join your community, a strong core culture will develop. And as a result, engagement will start taking care of itself, with existing members engaging with new ones, and with existing members asking thoughtful questions and starting discussions in your stead. This will lift some of the burden off your shoulders, but don't take your foot off the gas pedal entirely. So, what I mean by this is as your community grows in numbers, as more members join your community, what's going to happen is that eventually, and as a strong core culture develops, you're going to have existing members that interact with new members on their own. And so that takes off the burden and responsibility of you having to actually engage with as soon as possible all these new members that come into your community. But again, I added the detail that you don't want to take your foot off the gas pedal entirely, right? You don't want to depend on the fact that existing members are going to interact with new members. You want to be interacting with new members as much as you can, but this is just to say that things will get easier the more your community grows and the more of this positive feedback loop you create.